Lupe Fiasco doesn't do himself any favors. Look, I get it. Over the years, it seems like anyone who's been close with Lou has had some type of fallout with him. You know, he's been engaged in all kinds of beefs with other very good lyricists, from Kendrick Lamar to Royce da 5'9", which we covered on this channel. He fell out with his own label. He's fallen out with Cudi before. He's always fallen out with somebody. And it seems nowadays there's definitely an underappreciation and almost like a forgotten aspect to what Lupe Fiasco is capable of as an artist and kind of who he is. And the one thing you can't take away is that the man is just an amazing lyricist, a great intellectual mind, and he really speaks on some high-level concepts and has some great constructs for albums and some great art pumped into it. And I even talked about it on my Rolling Stone review of the top 200 hip-hop albums of all time. I was absolutely shocked that The Cool did not make it even in the top 50 range. For me, pushing top 25 album of all time, there was no mention of Lupe Fiasco anywhere on that list, but The Cool is always going to exist as a masterpiece and a timeless classic within hip-hop. But I'll be honest, besides the Royce beef, it's been years for me personally since I've delved into the world of Lupe Fiasco, and that's why when I walked into drill music in Zion, I really kind of had low expectations for this, because in a way I kind of had forgotten what Lou was capable of. But let me tell you, this is not an album to sleep on. The first track, The Lion's Den, sets the tone, making me think of the religious references. Lupe always has a lot of religious allegory through his rap. So Daniel in The Lion's Den, the way that he sets this up, and he's got a very beautiful spoken word piece, kind of set up like he set up The Cool, and it sort of just lays out the structure for the album, the concepts that he's going to talk about, discusses issues within our society, issues within the streets of Chicago where Lou is from. And overall, I just found it a beautiful, poetic, raw, honest, metaphorical tone setter. And then we get into it. And this is the thing about Lupe's style that I've talked about. The man kind of is a web weaver, right? He'll start off on a singular strand of thought and a concept, and then he'll continue that through his schemes, and he'll revert back to it, and he'll build off of that thread, and then he might start weaving another one, and another one after that, and then bars down, and later on he'll take all three of those strands and tie them all together, or then he'll diverge from them. But he's always having these interconnections, whether it's through the course of the album itself, through the track, or even the verse that he's on, and there's just different layers to every single story that he's telling. I mean, look at the title of the album itself, Drill Music in Zion. It's no coincidence that Chicago, birthplace of the drill scene, you know, the glorification of violence, the heavy, dark drill music that led forth to the movement that then has gone out to the UK, that has come back from the UK, hitting Brooklyn nowadays, hitting NYC, you know, originating from Chi-Town. And Lupe, who's a very conscious rapper, you know, the avant-garde of the backpacking era of rap, especially in the mainstream, always wants to use his platform to speak out on issues that he believes in. And in this case, you know, he's trying to speak out on the violence within Chi-Town, on the violence within the streets that he's witnessed. So in a way, it's sort of an ironically named album because it's kind of drilling the drill music itself. It's going contrary to the drill sound. But that's just one layer. Another layer that could go even deeper when you think about Zion, start thinking about drilling down into Zion, like the machines within the Matrix, drilling down into Zion itself. And he's got a line on Gotti, Neuralink is now pirating all of your fantasies. And this concept of technology and AI and computers not having souls, and kind of where humanity is going as we rely more and more on social media, as we rely more and more on technology and interconnectedness, and the dangers that that foreshadows as well. Much in the same way of the machines taking over in the Matrix, the machines drilling down, drilling, killing humanity, and then tying back to this cycle of violence that Lupe discusses. And hell, I mean, it's Lupe. I mean, we could go even further. You want to talk about drilling, like drilling down for oil? Lupe really stands up for climate change. He represented the water warriors, I remember, back in the day. Like, he's always going to speak on different socially conscious, environmental issues, political issues, and street issues that he sees. And that's just kind of one example with a simple album title, with a simple concept that Lupe takes, and he just kind of starts to weave different webs and different layers and different meanings. Autoboto is probably the most get hype, single standing track on the album. That's probably why he released it as a single itself, but I do love him playing off of Lupe Carrera and his alter ego and his alternate personality, and there's a good dancing back and forth between that. Lupe also tackling different issues in addition to the violence, talking about materialism, addressing the different addictions to materialism, how materialism is represented in our culture, how we feel like we have to flaunt it to show signs of success. And it's a really cool hook. I mean, it's playing off of the Autoboto, like an automobile, auto body, the Corvette changing, transforming. Lupe is changing and transforming into his alter ego, much in the same way that a transformer changes. Precious Things has a beautiful, soulfully haunting chorus on that. And this really feels like the track where we're starting to kind of get to the core concepts of the album, some of the core issues that Lupe wants to address. He's got a very cool, very sleek hand scheme that just ties into the first verse and the second verse, cleaning your hands, manicures, talking about materialism, things that you put on your hands, things that you show off. And then he transitions the hand scheme into like rock, paper, scissors, and toting different things. The scissors in terms of guns, then the hands relating to bearing arms, artillery, weaponry, tying once more into the violence, into the theme of the drill music. I mean, he even drops an anime bar for all my anime fans out there with Vampire Hunter D. Very sleek bar as well. Kiosk, which follows this track, is a very clever metaphor on hip-hop culture, on materialism as well. In this case, Lupe is painting a picture of a kiosk and the different wares being sold from that kiosk and how everybody is equal within the state of the mall, which is also speaking sort of on the platform and on the trends of the music itself and how everybody is kind of equal, and yet it seems like everyone moves and is controlled by and influenced by the different material gains, and that's what's reflected in a lot of the rap music today. And for those thinking that Lupe doesn't still have it in terms of elite pen game and MCing, all they have to do is go turn on Miss Mural, which is one of my personal favorite tracks on the album. I mean, this blew me away when I did the Twitch live stream. It was just literally line for line for line for line rhyme schemes, 11, 12, 13, 14 syllable rhyme schemes. He was just, I mean, the whole thing was like a Christmas tree. Like if you just would have lit up all of the rhymes, like it was crazy how intricate it was. The condensed internal schemes, the external schemes, the A to B entire sentence schemes. Wow, that was MCing at its finest. And the story too. And I've said this before about Lupe. He's got a little bit of sort of Aesop rock in the sense that there's certain lines that he drops that are just very metaphorical. They could be interpreted in so many ways as he lays out these different parables and these different teachings and these different symbolisms for us to try to digest and think on. But whereas Aesop will just have entire songs that are just laced with that symbolism and kind of laced with that craziness, I mean, Lupe kind of drops you one or two of those lines, takes it off into more of a abstract sort of way, but then he'll bring it back around. And then he'll get more direct with it. And he'll kind of guide the listener back to his main purpose and his main message, which is exemplified here in Miss Mural. In the case of an artist who is having a conversation with a patron, the artist creating the art. And in many ways, you can see that that's Lupe creating the art, and it could be the label speaking to Lupe, telling him to capitalize on trends, telling him to reflect the different scenarios that he grew up in, speak about the violence. But in this case, don't go against the grain, just speak on that because that's what sells, that's what trends. Speak on these different things that is going to help you get the bag and that the general public will enjoy consuming and will still call good art. And if you want to speculate, it could go even further because, again, a lot of religious imagery that Lupe uses as well. You could even say that it's God speaking to Lupe and talking to him about these different things and these different issues, because God, being Lupe's patron, giving Lupe the gifts, the talent that he has to create the music that he does. And it's a great critique on the music industry, the hip-hop industry as a whole, on the culture itself, how the public consumes it, how we digest it, how trends work and move and change, and, how do you relate that to art? And what part of art do you sacrifice for trends and vice versa? And the culmination of all of it is a very dark turn at the end where the painter basically just sets his entire work on fire and burns. And furthering that religious imagery could be burning, going down to hell, selling your soul in a sense. I mean, it's Lupe. There's so many different ways you can interpret things. It's great. Naomi is very smooth, soulful, jazzy, boom bap. I love the line where heaven loses a job, hell wins staff. And that sort of soul and spirit is laced throughout the production of this album. And I commented on this before, and maybe it's because me being more of an old head, like I just love the jazzy, the classic sounding, the bluesy vibes, man. A lot of brass well used in this, a lot of very smooth piano schemes. I mean, Lupe has definitely taken sort of a nostalgic feel and implemented it into drill music and Zion. And speaking of drill music and Zion, the title track itself is another just example of Lupe's just lyrical prowess and metaphor capabilities. Line lines like copper ebonics, competent and gannet, Godzilla's economics, rock gondolas till you vomit. Just the whole copper becoming more and more of a rare, precious metal being stolen nowadays, relating to ebonics, much in the same way that a lot of sort of black culture, black words and terminology have been assimilated, or you could say stolen and applied to the mainstream, much in the same way that certain rap trends and rap things now affect just culture and society as a whole today. I mean, even just pulling out a dictionary word like gannet, which can just relate to a monster, in this case relating to the Godzilla scheme right after that. It's just so smooth in the way that he puts that together. And overall, that's a line you could step back from and again look at as a critique of the music industry of hip-hop. How many things are taken, applied, but it's all for economics. Godzilla economics, as he puts it, till you vomit. And this is Lupe, again, speaking out symbolically about the change that he wants to see and some of the trends that he doesn't necessarily like within the industry and within music itself. It's no secret, again, why he fell out with his own label. And Lupe with his religious imagery with lines like, let's try and turn this quarter water to a quarter, bottles in Jane's. Jane's being Bartle and Jane's, classic wine. So turning water into wine, much in the way that Jesus did. Again, you'll find a lot of religious symbolism throughout Lupe's lyrics too. Seattle is next up, and I think it's very aptly named because when I think Seattle, I think rainy days, looking out the window, musing, meditating. And Lupe has just this atmospheric presence. And I noticed this with the mixing of a lot of tracks on this album, Seattle especially, where you'll just take different vocal synths, especially through the chorus itself, and maybe you'll have like a main sit here, and then you'll have a harmony sit off to the side, then you'll have another vocal sound or humming sit back in the mix, and there's just a great sort of spacing and a great depth. And towards the end of a lot of these songs, Lupe will just let things play, let them marinate. It's like he'll hit you heavy with the lyricism, hit you heavy with the thoughts, and then he'll just let the last minute turn into sort of an atmospheric vibe, and you just kind of digest all of it and let it marinate while different sounds just hit different parts, the forefront, the background, just filling the different spaces of the headphones. It's just, it's very well mixed. I love concepts like this. We talked about this when we addressed Kendrick Lamar's album too. On Phonem, it's just a great way to end the album. Another one of my favorite tracks on the album, and it has just one of the best verses I have ever heard in hip-hop history. The first verse by Lupe, which literally goes, rappers die too much. That's it. That's the verse. No, that's what he said. And then he just lets that breathe and just lets that ride. And you kind of sit there. And again, on my live reaction, I was just like, hang on a second. That really is the verse. That's genius. And then the second verse, he muses on why he said that because he wanted that to have an impact. And it gets right back to the point and to the simple simplicity of the message of Lupe talking about this violence that's captivated in the drill music of Chi-Town, violence within his streets that he's tired of seeing, that he wants to speak out against, and he wants to use his music as a platform to show that you can make more conscious music, that you can make music and still be successful in rap and hip hop, not just talking about materialism, not just talking about the glorification of violence, not just talking about tricking. You can talk about other things, relationships, how you feel. You can talk about religion, your soul. You can reflect on history, on economics, even anime. I mean, Lupe dives out of all of these different topics and goes to show that you can do it at a very high level with just crazy multisyllabic schemes, amazing flow switches. And throughout this album, his flow is just so smooth. It's so self-assured. There's some great moments when he speeds up his lyricism and when he dots in between pockets, but for the most part, you know, it's not like he's trying to get out in front of beats and attack them. Like, he rides the beats and he kind of sits back and just takes you on a cruise with the different flow patterns that he finds. There's a very nice critique of Spotify towards the end of the third verse. You know, Spotify, which is notorious for basically paying artists 0.001 per stream. I mean, even if you have millions of streams, you still make next to nothing. But this is how a lot of the public consumes music nowadays, is through these streaming services who seem to hold more power and take so much away from the artists themselves. I mean, even the title of the track has some clever wordplay on Phonem, playing off of, you know, on my brothers, on those of past, putting it on there, the Chicago slang. And for Lupe, there's a lot of those reflections. And I also get these moments from Lupe when he wishes he was being lied to about certain things. You know, he almost doesn't want to address some of these ugly truths. There's talk about Thanksgiving and some of Americans' darker past and a lot of stuff. It's like Lupe just doesn't want to morally accept or morally take on board, because as someone who obviously overthinks and overprocesses so much and is so sensitive to everything, there's even almost a fine line for him in terms of what he can handle and what the temptation is to just dive into ignorance with it all. And I think that self-reflection in psychology is another sort of subtle theme that you find throughout this album. Overall, it's a very short album, 10 songs. It's very neat and tidy. But I feel like even though that's a short sort of track list for someone as complex as Lupe, you know, he still does a great job of getting the points across, of getting the message across that he wants to deliver with this album. My one and only complaint and big critique of this album is that there's no real like standalone singles that we had with a masterpiece like The Cool, which had Superstar and had other great cuts that could really get a lot more attention, get a lot more play, fall more into the public eye. But maybe that's not Lupe's point and intention with this album. I mean, this seems like one that's just more for his fans, more for the true appreciators of lyricism, of the depth and the socially conscious backpacking rap that Lupe brings to the table, which is a shame because the selfish part of me wants to see Lupe still be at that level today in terms of sales, in terms of public consumption. And maybe it could have done with just having like a really big feature on a chorus, or having some of those heavier hitting singles that you know is going to bring more attention, more advertising, more marketing, so that then you can really hit them with some of those messages and substances that you want. But for me, again, that's a critique that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with the artist's intention and conceptualization of the album itself. I mean, overall, I'm going to give Lupe Fiasco an 8 out of 10, a very, very strong 8 out of 10 with this one. It was just a lyrical masterpiece from him. It was nice to be welcomed back into the mind, into the crazy complex world of Lupe. And honestly, in terms of albums overall, I mean, there's a conversation to be had between Lupe and Kendrick. And for me so far, Lupe Fiasco has given us Album of the Year. And it's a shame because not enough people are going to appreciate it. Not enough people are going to digest this. But you know, it's got a great flow through the production. There's a very good connection throughout. The lyricism lines up. The concepts line up. Yeah, it just all interconnects. Whenever Lupe makes an album, it really feels like he gives us a cohesive piece of art. And I will say that the one album that I've not heard yet that I'm waiting to do a Twitch live on would be Pusha T's album. That would possibly be the only one that I've seen people talking about that could maybe take Album of the Year over this one. But as it stands right now, we're kind of at the halfway point. This is definitely the front runner for me in terms of best hip-hop album that I've digested so far. But what'd you guys think? How did you feel about Lupe Fiasco's album? Have you not seen it yet? Maybe this review will help influence you. I highly, highly recommend you go check it out. Drill Music and Zion. But comment below. Let me know your thoughts on it all, guys. You know I always appreciate it. Also, if you're here at the end of this video, do me a favor, support the channel directly. Subscribe, notifications on. It really does go a long way. As always, stay safe, stay positive, guys. I love you. I'll catch you again.